Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by ICOM. Heard it? Worked it? Logged it. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about ICOM radios.
It's Ham Radio with Neil Rapp. Here we go. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Call in, let's talk. Neil's your guy. Ham Talk Live. Here we go on Ham Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 145. High altitude ballooning recorded live on Thursday, December 20th, 2018. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight, we're joined by Josh Ward, W3ARD, and we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week here on the show, Steve Narducci, W9SN, and Fred Denon, WW4LL, were here to talk about the Be Loud contest station build. And if you missed that show, you can listen anytime. Just go over to hamtalklive.com or your favorite podcast app or YouTube, and you can catch us there on the replays. Well, some announcements coming up, actually already starting, the 12 Days of Christmas special event station, but starting tomorrow, I'm going to jump in. The operators had some technical issues with LED Christmas lights, among other things, making racket. And so I'm going to jump in and help out a little bit on the special event. So I'll be on HF tomorrow after 3 p.m. Eastern for a while, and then later on in the evening I'll be back on as well, and hope to also get a few satellite contacts this weekend with the special event for the 12 Days of Christmas. So tomorrow I know I'm W2M, so I'll be one of the W2M operators, and then we'll see what they give me after that. But give me a call. We'll spot on DX Summit, and if you want more information about the 12 Days of Christmas special event, go to QRZ.com and search either K2RYD or any of the call signs. Mine will be W2 Mike, Whiskey 2 Mike, and they'll tell you about the beautiful certificate you can get and all the 12 Days of Christmas stations. And that's going to culminate on a Christmas birthday special event on December 25th. You can check out K2B, K2 Bravo on QRZ.com about that, but they're celebrating people who have birthdays on Christmas Day or any of the holidays around this time, New Year's, whatever. So check that out, but the event will be on December 25th. So check that out. That's K2 Bravo. And then one other on-air thing going on, NASA on the Air. We've talked about it on this show a couple of times, and that is ending here in a week. So that ends on December 27th with the Apollo 8 50th anniversary celebration. So be sure to check out NASA Radio Clubs on Facebook and Twitter, and NASAontheair.wordpress.com for more information about that. But you've got a week to get your last points for NASA on the air, so make sure you check that out. Okay, well, we're going to talk high-altitude ballooning tonight, so get those questions ready to go. We'll talk to Josh for a little bit, then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and open up the phone lines, but I'll go ahead and give you the phone number so you have it written down and have it all ready to go. It's 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. That's how you can call in to participate into the show tonight. We'll also take tweets. So if you're on Twitter, you can tweet us. It's just at Ham Talk Live on Twitter, and we'll be checking that from time to time. And I'll be back with Josh right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having an antenna party and I ran out of PL259s.
Oh, come in.
Thank you.
Would silver-plated PL259s from Tower Electronics be too good for your guests?
Those will be fine. Thank you. You saved my life the other night.
Oh, the PL259s from Tower Electronics?
Yes, they were very successful at the antenna party. My antenna works like a charm.
Then how can you ever thank me?
I'll try to think of something.
Don't be caught without PL259s. Visit Tower Electronics at a ham fest near you, or visit them online anytime at pl-259.com, or call 920-435-2973. They have adapters, cables, antennas, soldering supplies, and meters too.
If Denny's is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, why are there locks on the doors? Now, here's Neil Rapp with more Ham Talk Live.
Thanks to Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show, as they always do. And they're on a little break here of the Hamfest circuit, but they'll be back starting on January 5th. It's Waukesha, I think is how Paul told me how to pronounce that, Wisconsin. And then January 18th and 19th will be in Fort Myers, Florida. January 19th, St. Charles, Illinois. January 26th, one of them, I don't know which one's going where, but one's being Collinsville, Illinois, and the other one Arcadia, Florida. But you can always visit them at pl-259.com even tonight. So if you need some last-minute gifts, just go over there to pl-259.com and tell them Neil over at Ham Talk Live sent you, and they'll give you the special 0% off sale. Well, Josh Ward is with us tonight, W3ARD. He is in Waco, Texas, and no, he doesn't have any connection to the Branch Davidians, nor does he know Chip and Joanna, but Josh enjoys working satellites and APRS high-altitude balloons, and he's a resident late-night operator on the satellites, typically, and one of the contributors to the Walmart parking lots on the air events, and he was on this show for that. He has his pilot's license and is a technology consultant for the Baylor University School of Business. So, Josh, welcome back to Ham Talk Live.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Neil. Glad to be back on. I'm not sure about contributor. I think maybe co-conspirator.
Conspirator might have been.
I think that's probably the better way to put it. Yeah,
it may have been more accurate. I
right.
think, but we had a lot of fun with that. And we may have to see. We haven't had one of those in a while. We may have to bring that back.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to talk to Chris and some of the other guys on that one. But yeah, that was fun right at the very beginning of May.
Well, we're talking about something else that's fun, and that's blowing up balloons and launching them into near space. So,
correct.
Let's talk about the basics of launching one of these high-altitude balloons. And it is a radio show, so we can't say, well, if you look at this diagram right here,
correct.
So if you can... Josh has got some stuff up on his website. It's starduster.info. And we just tweeted out a link and sent out a Facebook link to that page. But if you just go to starduster.info, you can look at some of the pictures and visuals if you want to. He's going to try to explain everything verbally, but if you want some pictures to go along with it, just hop on over there while you're listening. So, Josh, go ahead and let's talk about the basics of high altitude ballooning.
Sure thing. Well, to start with, high altitude ballooning is actually the reason I got into amateur radio to begin with. People have been doing this for, years and years and years. I've seen other attempts. You can go to tons of websites and kind of see how other people do it. I would love to fancy myself as the kind of person that could, redo cars and, gut a house and redo interiors of houses. But, there's always something about it, something there that, would kind of stump me or stop me in my tracks. And I kind of know my limits. But as I started looking at the concept of sending balloons into near space, 80, 90, 100,000 feet, as I stepped through it, I realized that pretty much the whole project was right in my wheelhouse of photography and being a pilot, stepping through the aviation side and the winds aloft and path prediction and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of thought about doing it for a year or two. And then I guess it's been about 4 years. I went ahead and committed to, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Knew that it was not the cheapest hobby to get into. And so I just went to Kickstarter, mostly as a more legitimate way to collect funds from friends. You can talk about it at lunch and somebody will say, oh yeah, I'll give you $40, but then to go to actually make the ask, it was a whole lot easier to go to Kickstarter and look for funding. Which is actually the reason that I have the starduster.info website. Is I kept up the project updates in parallel on my website as I was doing updates to the original Kickstarter backers 4 years ago. So if you step over to that website, you can kind of see the progress of a build as we go. Whenever people see the pictures, immediately you see the curvature of the Earth and you see the blackness of space, and everybody always says, "Hey, you send balloons to space," and the answer is not exactly. We're above 99.97% of the atmosphere. We're approaching a hard vacuum, but legally, space doesn't begin until 60 miles. I know there's astronauts that get wings at 50 miles. We're not even breaching 20 miles. Pictures are compelling, they're convincing, but that's why I go out of my way to say near space. Got into the hobby about 4 years ago. Each launch has gotten incrementally more complex and difficult. Learning curve. I don't launch balloons as often as some folks. I know some people that do it monthly. Some people have made a career out of it. I just enjoy taking it piece by piece, sort of step by step. My first launch I ever did, I did not fly with APRS. I was not licensed, and I got away with 2 GoPro cameras and a little backpacking GPS tracking device, a little Spot Gen 3 device. But then very quickly realized that getting into amateur radio and tracking with APRS was going to be a much, much better option for more real-time tracking, which is actually the reason that I have the vanity call sign, the Whiskey 3 Alpha Romeo Delta. I live in 5 land, but at the time, I didn't think I was ever really going to be talking on the radio. I just got the license because I wanted to do APRS, and then realized I enjoyed the satellite aspects of the hobby, and so now I'm a confusing vanity 3 living in 5 land here in Texas.
But on your Twitter, you kind of clarified that with the stroke 5, right? Right,
yeah. W3ARD spelled out stroke 5. I think somebody else was sitting on the Twitter handle W3ARD, so I had to get creative and append it with some extra information.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, what all do you need to get one of these launches going? And then we'll get into some of the specifics of the ham stuff, but
right.
What are you going to need to make this thing fly?
So first and foremost, if you're going to do high altitude balloons, you're probably going to have a balloon.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I purchased my balloons from Kmont. There are other folks that'll sell you balloons, but I usually fly Kmont, and I will fly a 1,200 or a 1,500 gram balloon. When you purchase a 12 or 1,500 gram balloon, that's actually how much the balloon itself weighs. So 1,500 gram balloon is over 3 pounds of latex. I mean, the balloon itself is over 3 pounds. 6 foot diameter approximately at launch. And as it climbs and expands, they'll climb out to 28 or 32 feet in diameter, and then they'll fail at a very prescribed diameter, which is good because you want the balloons to fail. You need them to fail because you want your stuff to come back down for recovery. But the balloons run anywhere from $95 to maybe $110, $120 a piece. Helium, a 2,000 psi cylinder, 219 cubic feet of helium, depends on the time of year, depends on the year, going to run you anywhere from 130 to 160 a piece. So you're already $250 to $280 just into the first launch, and that's just with the balloon and the helium. Depending on what you want to carry, if you want to carry cameras, there are people that work with Raspberry Pi and small cameras that do everything on board. The fast solution is to buy GoPro or some type of other camera that is built and kind of proven already. I will say that the video that you shoot at whether it's 1080 or 4K is beautiful video, but video because it's 10,080 lines of resolution doesn't make for good photos. If you're trying to make beautiful photos, and I'm always interested in the photos, I've usually will fly a camera with video, and then I dedicate at least one camera to taking photos, 10 or 12 megapixel photos once per second or something to that effect. So I would advise, if you want beautiful photos, consider that video doesn't actually make great photos, which is why I fly more than one camera. And then you absolutely can buy styrofoam containers. I tend to like a more elegant, I jokingly say that, my hobby is, I work with elegantly engineered beer coolers. I prefer not to take a cooler from scratch from the store because I like to get inside the cooler and build out space for the camera and the batteries and stuff. I typically will go to a craft store and buy a flat sheet of styrofoam, take a hot knife like a wire cutter and actually cut them to spec, cut them to shape, and then build up the four walls and the base. And I like a little bit more elegant solution. But you're constantly watching weight. You're constantly watching, not necessarily down to the gram, although I do measure with a gram scale. There is a direct correlation to how much helium goes into the balloon. We use the term free lift. So if the balloon can lift itself and the balloon can lift your payload exactly neutral and the balloon's not going anywhere, any amount of helium you add beyond that is what we would call free lift. And there's a kind of a prescribed way of doing it where I know with my payloads, if I fly with 850 grams of free lift, I can realize about 750 feet per minute of ascent. So whenever you're trying to do prediction on where the balloon's going to go, a lot of your prediction is going to be based on having a knowledge of how quickly the balloon's going to ascend so that you can plug it into a wind model. Some people think, hey, I'll add more helium and we'll go higher. And the answer is actually not. If you add more helium to the balloon, the helium will expand quicker and exhaust the envelope of the balloon. So more helium might get you ascending quicker, but your balloon will fail and burst sooner. So, if you have an objective of I want to make 90,000 feet or I want to make 100,000 feet, there's a lot of math that you kind of have to work behind the scenes to get all of that right. But, in the grand scheme of things, helium balloon, some long cables, I guess. We use twine, beer cooler, a couple of cameras, and then some method with which to track it and then recover your payloads. Some people use backpacking trackers like the Spot Gen 3. APRS is great while you're actually aloft. But if APRS lands out in the middle of a field and you're not getting digipeated or you're not getting eye-gated, that can be kind of rough. So some folks will do like a fox hunt. They'll have some type of transmitter on a frequency that they're using Yagis to find out the final location. Or if you have like a Kenwood or any of the handheld radios or car-based radios that have APRS built in, if you're in close proximity, you can even sniff out your own APRS packet, which is luckily kind of how I've been able to do it. I use APRS in the air, and I take advantage of the distributed APRS receivers that all of you fine ham folks have. And then for the final fix, I usually rely on the GPS tracker, the satellite-based tracking for like a backpacking tracker for the final fix.
Okay, very good, and lots of software there too, I'm sure. And let's talk a little bit because we're running out of time here.
Sure.
Let's run through a little bit about crossband repeating and getting that APRS signal going.
Sure. So on the crossband repeat side, I probably most folks know what crossband repeat is, but on a terrestrial-based repeater, you can live entirely on 2 meter or entirely on 70 centimeter. But with a balloon, you don't have the power and you don't have the weight to be able to operate on the same band. So we work with a crossband repeater, which is almost identical to what you would have on the amateur satellites, on the FM side at least. And so, people do solutions that are as simple. It's a little bit more complicated, but they're as simple as like two just handheld like Bofang radios, where essentially you take the headphone jack from one radio on a receive frequency and basically get it wired into the microphone jack of the other radio on the other band. So, you might have one tuned to a 2 meter frequency and one tuned to a 70 centimeter frequency. And, as you talk on the 2 meter, it basically activates the downlink on the other Bofang. There are handheld
by the way,
radios.
we have to pause.
Oh, go ahead.
Just 1 second. Because you said the word Baofeng, we had to play the Baofeng song. So, okay.
I understand.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I'm tracking with you. Yeah. The other, I don't know if you have a song for this one, but the other option is there are handhelds that actually have crossband repeat built in. TYT 8000E, I believe, is one. So you could fly an all-in-one. And then there's other solutions. Like I said, people fly Raspberry Pi with special software that actually will function as a crossband repeater. Odds are you probably really, really want to do something that you can inject repeater ID tones into. If you're going to fly a repeater, you probably kind of need to live by the rules of a repeater IDing itself since you're not in local control of it. I do tend to ID the repeater through voice, but if you lost control of the repeater, having ID tones to be legal is kind of the way to go. So on the APRS side, one of the things that's kind of interesting, a lot of people don't know, most GPS that you buy will stop reporting above 60,000 feet. The government is not too keen on GPS that reports above 60,000 feet and faster than 999 knots. Having one that does both, I think, is considered a munition. So you can find GPS, but a lot of them won't report above 60,000. So if you're going to fly a balloon, you need to make sure that your GPS receiver will report above 60,000 feet, or you're going to be kind of in the dark for that hour and a half that it's above that level. But APRS, you definitely want a transmit only. If you have a transmitter receiver for APRS, your APRS is going to get every single packet for like a 700-mile radius, and it's never going to be able to get a word in and send its information back down. So you want one that's really doing transmit only. And you want your path basically to do absolutely no repeat whatsoever, or you're not asking digipeters to repeat your packet, because with a 700-mile footprint, whenever you have hundreds of APRS receivers, if they all are repeating your packet, you basically have choked out the network about once per minute, and that's very rude of you. So you need to pay attention to APRS path, transmit only, no repeat, and having a radio in the car that'll do that packet translation is very, very handy, because if a balloon is tracking across the country, like in Texas, you may be in areas where there's not good cell connectivity, and if you don't have good cell connectivity, you can't necessarily get to aprs.fi to even find out where the balloon is. So having something mobile in the car where you are able to receive your own packets is highly suggested.
All
Where
right.
else would I go?
Well, very good. We got some messaging going on here, so I had to attend to that for a minute. But that's some general things. There's a lot of detail that we could get into, and maybe we will here in a few weeks, actually. But there's a lot of detail, but that gives us a general kind of overview of what's going on, which was our goal for tonight. So that sounds good, and we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about the tracking here a little bit more, and we're going to take your questions and your phone calls here on the show. So we'll get a chance to do that, and I'll be back with Josh right after this word from ICOM America right here on Ham Talk Live. For the love of the holidays, surprise your favorite ham this season with the gift that's on their hot list. The holidays are just around the corner, and ICOM has plenty of cheer for everyone. The IC7610, the SDR every ham wants, and just in time for the holidays. This high-performance SDR has the ability to pick out the faintest of signals, even in the presence of stronger adjacent ones. The ICOM IC7610 is a direct sampling software-defined radio that will change the world's definition of an SDR transceiver. It has RF direct sampling, 110 dB RMDR, and dual digicell. The IC7300 is changing the way entry-level HF is designed. This high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design will far exceed your expectations. It includes RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, a large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and SD memory card slot. The ICR30 is raising the bar on DC to daylight receivers. Powerful yet easy to use, the ICR30 is packed full of features you have come to expect from ICOM. The perfect stocking stuffer, the ID51A Plus 2, provides new modes for extended D-Star coverage. Enjoy integrated GPS, independent AM/FM receiver, and free Android apps. For all of these products and more ICOM radios, visit icomamerica.com/amateur for more information.
Join the conversation. Give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
All I want for Christmas is to listen to another episode of Ham Talk Live.
Thanks to ICOM America for sponsoring the show, and all kinds of great ICOM deals through the end of the year. So make sure you take advantage of those. And Ham Talk Live is on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here at hamtalklive.com. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's time for your calls. So if you have a question for Josh, give us a call. It's 812-NET HAM1. That's 812-638-4261, or you can tweet us. It's at Ham Talk Live on Twitter. So I know we've got a friend of the show here, Bill Brown, that's done a lot of this stuff, and we've been talking to him today, and we're planning on having him on the show here in maybe a month or so. We'll get that all put together, and he can get into some of the details here. But one of the things on APRS tracking is, how do you watch that and track those pseudo satellites. How do you get the tracking so that you can chase this thing down?
Right. So if I'm at the house and want to see what's going on, I use APRS.fi. I mean, you can just go to the website, APRS.fi. That's it, right? APRS.fi.
Yep.
And then search against whatever license you happen to be flying. I usually fly W3 ARD, and then it's appended with -11 for the balloon. So I will search against that, and however long it takes the system to gate my packet, so within 30 seconds or so, I'm getting position data. I have my transmitter once per minute. You absolutely could go less than that. I mean, you could, do every 5 or 10 minutes. If you're trying to go real super low power, like Bill would be doing, that may be 15 minutes to once an hour, if you're really trying to conserve power. I not endorsing Apple products. I use an iPhone. Their APRS.fi app is a great app that allows me to track in real time. The thing I also like about that particular app on my phone is it does a very good job of graphing sort of what little telemetry you've got. So you can see the ascent of the balloon as it's climbing, and you can see how rapidly it is descending. So you've got a kind of a sense of what's going on. And so since I've said that, kind of a segue into another point that I find a little bit interesting. And this blew my mind the first time I saw it on the graph, and I've included that graph on the starduster.info website if you go there. The balloon actually climbs at a near linear rate. I would always thought maybe that it accelerated on the way up or it decelerated on the way up. If the balloon is filled right, it climbs at almost the same rate, no matter what the wind across, however the wind is pushing it, it is climbing at the same rate. So 750 feet a minute or 500 feet per minute. So that rate looks very linear on the graph. Of course, when the balloon bursts, there is no air, or there's so scarce amount of air that the balloon begins to accelerate gravity at 9.8 meters per second squared. The balloon descends very rapidly because there's nothing to slow it down until it gets into denser and denser and denser air. So when the balloon bursts, it can accelerate up to 180 to maybe 230 miles per hour as it's coming downhill until it can get into denser and denser air, and the parachute or the drogue chute becomes more and more effective. One of the other things that you have to consider with the balloon is, everybody knows the higher you go, the colder it gets. And that holds true for a while until you get to 60, 70,000 feet. And then you actually kind of have the opposite problem. Anything that produces heat, like cameras and radios, as you climb into that scarcer and scarcer air, there is no air with which to give heat to. You actually have radiation issues, as in you can't radiate heat from your payload. So if you're talking about a transmitter that's putting out a lot of information, modems or whatever, you actually have heat sink issues where you've got to put that heat somewhere because there literally is no air with which to give the heat to. So it becomes a very fun equation of keeping things warm on the ascent and then trying to keep them cool once you get above a certain altitude and they're doing their job full time. Just interesting things to think about that you learn as you go.
Sure. We don't often get up to 60,000 feet, so
Correct.
we don't know that kind of thing.
Right.
So that's good stuff to know. 812-638-4261 is the phone number. Go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, so on average, somewhere between 75 minutes to up to 2 hours ascent till the balloon bursts, and then depending on what type of chute that you have, anywhere from maybe 25 minute free fall descent, maybe as slow as 40 or so minutes. Depending, the question I get all the time is, where do you launch from? And the answer is, I don't actually know where I'm going to launch from until maybe 24 to 48 hours beforehand, because my launch location is dictated by what the wind model says I'm going to land, and I'm going to go out of my way to avoid cities and large lakes. I do take airspace considerations into that equation. So I don't always know where I'm going to launch until I know what the winds are going to do. So I kind of build a recovery area, a 5-10 mile circle, and say, okay, if I launch here, where do I need to go to make my balloon sort of land in this general vicinity? And because you don't really have a lot of control. I mean, once you put the helium in the balloon and you let it go, it's kind of up to the winds and the gods and did I do all the math right? And that becomes fun. It can also be very nerve-wracking because, like I said, you're not in control once you let it go. So it's a lot like storm chasing as you're driving through back roads trying to stay underneath this thing.
812-638-4261 is the phone number if you have a question for Josh. Give us a call, and we'll also be checking Twitter here as well. And I slipped up. I was trying to do two things at once here, and I said the satellite, and then suddenly, I was like, oh wait, it's pseudo satellite. So talk a little bit about that word pseudo satellite and how that's a little bit different from typical satellite communication.
Well, so I'm also involved in the amateur satellite amateur radio community. SO50, the AO series that are out right now, the FM satellites, they work in a lot of the same way with the crossband repeater. Of course, they're 300, 400 miles up, so their footprint is many thousands of miles. But to stay in orbit, they would have to be moving at 5 miles per second. So depending on sort of how they're approaching overhead, you may have 4 minutes of talk time, or maybe up to 12 minutes. But at 5 miles per second, you do, especially on the UHF side, have to take into account the Doppler shift. So with an actual satellite, you are having to adjust for as the satellite's coming overhead, that Doppler shift. But with a balloon, it's mostly static. I mean, it may be moving at 65 up to 100 miles an hour in the jet stream. But you could use the same aero antenna. You could use the same, crossed Yagi type antenna. But you would be communicating, a crossband repeater. You would just want to specify ahead of time, this is the uplink frequency that you transmit on, and you listen to the downlink on the other band. Sort of the same thing I would assume with the APRS. Crossband repeater at 70, 80, 90,000 feet is going to be able to hear. It's going to be able to receive, pretty much any transmission in the state of Texas. You would best be served by adding at least a PL receive tone on a crossband repeater that you hang at that altitude, because you don't really want your receiver open. You don't want your receiver transmitting just blindly, because, again, from 100,000 feet, you may have a 700-mile footprint. The odds of somebody transmitting on that uplink frequency increases with that big of a footprint. So you definitely would want some type of PL tone, probably a PL tone way out of range of what you would normally have in your state, in your area, just to keep people from accidentally stomping on what you're trying to do at altitude. I usually use 67 hertz just because where I'm at in Texas, it's primarily 123 on the PL tones.
Okay, very good. Well, 812-638-4261 is the phone number, and if you want to call in with something, give us a call right now. It's 812-638-4261. We'll keep it on here with Josh for a few more minutes this evening and talk a little bit about high-altitude ballooning. So give us a call, 812-638-4261. So let's see here. Okay, here we go. We have our call. Good evening. Hello?
Hey, this is Bill Brown.
Hey, Bill. How are we doing?
Doing good.
All right. We've got Bill Brown here on the line. And where did my notes go for your call? WB8ELK. And he's done this for forever, I think. So you mentioned that there's an event that you wanted to promote a little bit.
Yes. I've been flying high altitude balloons for 31 years now. And this summer there is an event called the Great Plains Super Launch. The website is superlaunch.org. And it draws balloon groups from all over the nation and often the world. And they all meet, and we have a conference on a Friday. This year is going to be in Pella, Iowa. And it basically moves around the greater part of the Midwest. And we get some of the balloon groups from all over the country. We have a conference, and we talk about the latest advances in high-altitude ballooning. And then we launch at least 10 weather balloons and a few pico balloons at a big event on the following Saturday in the morning, and we go out and we chase them all over the Iowa countryside. So they land in cornfields and soybean fields, and we have a ball chasing down 10 balloons at once.
It's very interesting.
The conference is open to anyone, and we would love to have anybody come and join us in the great fun.
It's actually very interesting to watch that event on APRS if you can't attend. If you watch on APRS, it's fun watching the balloons all kind of moving sort of somewhat in sync until they're not. It looks like a giant bowl of spaghetti. It's a lot of fun to watch those paths.
Yeah, it's. I've been going to it for about. I think it's 15 to 18 years now that it's been going on. Well, 15, I think.
Well, since Bill's on the line, I'll ask a question. Have you ever worked? Do you work exclusively with helium, or have you ever dabbled in hydrogen just as a better lifting body, but more precarious?
Actually, due to the high cost, the ever-increasing cost of helium, I have been using hydrogen for a lot of my flights, both the large latex balloons and the pico balloons. As long as you take precautions to cut down on the chance of static buildup, it's very safe. Actually, the worst that can happen, unless you get a bunch of air in it, is it just produce a brief fireball. But the pico balloons go at least 2,000 or 3,000 feet higher, and you get higher altitudes out of the regular latex weather balloons as well. I typically do use helium, however, for school events, because basically their insurance policies, they start getting a little concerned when you talk about hydrogen. They think Hindenburg, but you won't have a Hindenburg on your hand even if the worst happened. But it's been very safe. In fact, the last Great Plains Super Launch we did, the last two of them, in fact, most everybody flew with hydrogen with no issues.
Fantastic.
And so the cost of hydrogen for about a 219 cubic foot tank is right around $50-some. So it's a lot more cost effective than helium.
Third of the cost of the last helium launch that I had.
That's about right.
Yep.
Well, while we've got both of you on the line, we've got a couple of questions that have come in on text here. One on QRZ today was asking about HF telemetry and an HF signal. What's up with maybe some CW and 20 meters
I have
or something?
I've flown basic Morse code. I've flown Domino EX, which is a nice multi-tone, multi-frequency weak signal mode, and JT9, for example. These are all modes that you can have a very low-power transmitter and still get reception on, and just classic teletype, really. Now, lately, however, I've come up with a scheme to create telemetry using whisper mode. Whisper is a very weak signal mode, and the nice thing about it is there's a distributed network of ground stations all over the world tuned to this segment of the 20-meter band or the 30-meter band, and it's for propagation, and most everybody transmits with 5 watts or less. In my case, I wanted a 12-gram payload that's totally solar powered, and it produces a whopping 25 milliwatts. And I use a magnet-wired dipole that weighs 3 grams. So the total payload is 15 grams, just a fraction of an ounce. And I could put it on a Mylar party balloon. And in fact, there's another balloon called the SBS-13 by Scientific Balloon Solutions. They have one about the size of a trash bag. And those can go and float in the jet stream or above the jet stream in the case of the larger balloon, and have the potential to go completely around the world. And they're jet stream floaters. And the really neat thing is they take minimal amounts of helium or hydrogen. And the balloon for a party balloon, it's a 36-inch Mylar party balloon. Those balloons cost $3 a piece. And you've got about a cubic foot of gas, lifting gas. The trash bag-sized balloon costs about $129. But I had one of those go around the world 75 days. It stayed aloft, and it went around the world 6 times. So using HF, I send 2 transmissions on Whisper, one with my call sign and one with telemetry embedded in it. That all goes, if it's received, it goes to a database on whispernet.org. And then I use a Python script to grab that data, reformat it, decode my telemetry, and send it to APRS.FI so it shows up like an APRS object. And that way, if you ever see an APRS balloon over the middle of the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, you wonder, how did anybody receive that? That's how it happened.
Right. Very good. Well, we look forward to having you on the show here in a few weeks and talk about those Pico balloons and some of the more detailed aspects of this, Bill. And thanks for writing in this morning and some of the information you've been typing to us tonight. And we appreciate it and look forward to having you on the show here soon.
Absolutely. And happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about high altitude ballooning or the Pico balloons. Okay to give my email address out?
Sure.
I can. It's WB8ELK, Whiskey Bravo 8 Echo Lima Kilo, at gmail.com. And I'm happy to answer anybody's questions.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Bill. We appreciate your time tonight, and thanks for calling in.
All right. Thanks very much.
All right. Take care now. 7-3.
Bye now.
All right. Well, we're about out of time here, Josh, but I do have one other tweet that I see here from K5IX from Dave, and says, "Hey, Josh, still cherish my cool Night Owl QSL. Just interested to know what sort of crew you use for launch and recovery or is it all manageable by yourself? And hope to bump into you again sometime.
Well, it's great hearing from Dave, fellow Texan. And there is sort of a story about bumping into each other. I was down in Austin a couple of months ago just doing my thing, and I got a text message from him. Apparently he'd walked by and saw my vanity license plate. The odds of us both being in the same place in Austin at the same time and him recognizing my license plate are slim to none. But to answer the question, for the type of balloons that we're talking about, the helium balloons, definitely having 2 or 3 hands to help with the filling process, tying off the balloons, attaching the payload. Definitely best served by having 2 or 3 folks on hand. I've done it with Baylor engineering students. My wife now, girlfriend, fiance at the time, having her on board. I've had family members, but as far as the launch crew, 2 to 4 people on hand is probably the best way to go. Once you let the balloon go, you're going to want to chase pretty quickly. So having somebody that's willing to sort of stay back and load up bottles and load up all the gear is really, really handy. Chasing, you could probably chase with 1 or 2 folks. It's nice to go out with a group of folks. I mean, we've had as many as 10 or 12 cars on the chase. Landing in certain areas, if you've got to do any kind of fox hunt, if you've got to do any kind of direction finding, being able to have, 2 or 3 crews that can spread out and try to get a fix on a balloon. It's fun to share with folks. So I'd recommend, 2 to 4 people for launch, the more the merrier. And then, once the balloon's aloft, again, it's a lot like a high altitude. It's a lot like a satellite. It's a shared resource. But you just let as many people know as possible and let them make, QSOs on the balloon, and usually pretty short QSOs just because it's a shared resource, much like a satellite. But the more the merrier. It's fun. It's fun sharing the hobby and fun sharing the photos and the videos and doing these kind of events like this with you.
Well, I've sure enjoyed a lot of your pictures and videos that you shared with me, and it's some pretty cool stuff. So thanks so much for coming on the show and telling us about it. And like I said, we're going to follow up on it and do another one here soon and get into some more specifics. But this gives us a great overview of what's going on with high altitude ballooning. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill, for chiming in. I'll say the same thing Bill did. My email address and QRZ is active, and I'm usually happy to answer pretty much any question that comes my way. So email me, email Bill. We work separately, never met until today, but most of us that are in the hobby would love to share and talk about it. So Neil, appreciate your time. Thank you. Early Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and all your listeners, and appreciate it. W3ARD.
Okay, yep. You can catch him at W3ARD. Just get in there on QRZ, and you can email Josh if you have some questions. So we're going to finish things up here tonight, but thanks to Josh, W3ARD, for coming on the show, and that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. And thanks to everybody out there in cyberspace for listening and for calling in and typing in. And I invite you back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time when Drew Glassbrenner, KO4MA, will be here to talk about making the most of satellite time. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, you can visit hamtalklive.com. And if you like Ham Talk Live, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. That helps others find us faster. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375. May the good DX be yours, and a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all.